So, the quickest you can get your Judo black belt in the UK is around 20 months, which is pretty crazy actually. So I get asked this quite a lot, and I didn't really see a good version for what it's like in the UK, how long it takes here, and the different methods you can use of getting your black belt. So I got my first dan 10 years ago now, and I'm still a first dan. In Venice, I haven't really been trying to get my second since then, but anyway. So I started judo when I was 5, I did it until I was 10, and then I actually gave up because I lost in a competition, and I was and still am a giant baby. But then I came back to the sport when I was around 14, and then I ended up getting my first dan when I was 17. So it was over a long period of time, but there was probably only 3 years of like adult training in there. But then when I did come back to judo at 14, I was able to keep my grade, which was a 4th Q, I think, which was an orange belt. So there's already like a few grades in, so it's not like starting from scratch again. So now's probably a good time to talk about the grading system and the different ranks and how that all works. This will definitely vary in kids judo. Some different schools have different ways of ranking their kids, and they might have lots of different belts that aren't in the official BJA syllabus, usually to make a bit of extra cash on gradings. But the adult system will be pretty consistent across the whole of the country and most of the world. So you have 6 Q grades, which isn't including white belt, because technically everyone's a white belt. So red belt is the equivalent to 6th Q, yellow belt is the equivalent to 5th Q, orange belt 4th Q, green belt 3rd Q, blue belt 2nd Q, brown belt 1st Q. And at the start, so 6th and 5th Q, which is red and yellow belt, you can be promoted at a rate of 1 Q grade per calendar month. So you could basically go from do your 6th Q, do your 5th Q in 2 months. So you'll be a yellow belt at the end of 2 months if you graded at the fastest possible rate that you can. Then for the next 4 Q grades, so for orange belt, green belt, blue belt, brown belt, you can only be graded at a rate of 1 Q grade per 3 calendar months. So that would take, again, at the quickest possible rate, 12 months. So in total now you're looking at 14 months to get from white belt to brown belt, so just over a year. Now the exciting bit, you need to be a brown belt for at least 6 months before you can attain your first dan. So in theory, you can get your black belt in 20 months in the UK. So I should probably point out that I've never met anyone that has got their black belt that fast, and I've met quite a few black belts, and that's mostly because people that have been training long enough to get their black belt, which is you need to be at least 15, have been training since they were a kid. I don't know many 15-year-old black belts. They do exist, but it's very, very difficult, and I'll get onto why in a second. I would say on average in this country it will take between 3 to 8 years to get your black belt. If you're an adult, it largely depends on the amount of time that you're training. So if you're training 3 times a week, I think you could be towards the lower end of that scale, but if you're training like most clubs, which is normally only 1 day a week, you could be well towards the upper end of that scale and even further. In terms of the length of time as well, it very much depends on which route you're going to use to get there, which brings us nicely onto the different routes of how you get your black belt. The main 2 are competitive and technical. So firstly, competitive. This is how I got mine, and this is probably how the majority of judo could do it, mainly because it can be the quickest, but I definitely think it could also be the toughest, because so you could get in theory all the way to 1st Q or brown belt without ever having to do a competition with the way the current judo system works. It used to be slightly different, but now you can do all of your gradings at your home club, and you don't actually have to go out and fight for any other grade other than your black belt. So you could be completely unaccustomed to competitions, and then you have to go into a competition where you have to fight other brown belts that are looking to get their black belt. Some of them are normally very competitive, and it can be a little bit tough if you're not used to that environment. So it usually involves you going to what's called a dan grading, which is specifically set up for brown belts or black belts looking to progress, gain promotion. You can also gain points at other competitions throughout the BJA calendar. It will be stated on them if points are achievable there or not. Some competitions aren't considered high enough ranking for you to gain points there, but others are. But the aim of the game is to go to one of these dan gradings and collect 100 points. So you get 10 points for an Ippon win, 7 points for a win by Wazari, and no points for a loss. So you have at least 2 or 3 initial fights, and if you win 2 of those, you'll be offered what's called a lineup, which is where you then get to face 3 other people in a consecutive order in a row, and if you win all of those, or at least 2 by Ippon, then you gain the 100 points for your black belt in one go. So this can be a quicker way of doing it because you can literally turn up to one downgrading, smash everyone, and there's your black belt. So if you lose any of those fights in your lineup, you don't complete it, but you will get the points from it. So say for my first lineup, I won my 3 initial fights, I then won the first 2 in the lineup, and then I lost my last one. So in total, I gained 50 points from that day, but if I just won that last extra fight, I would have gained all 100. Also, if you don't manage to win your initial fights, your qualifying fights, then you might be one of those people that is in someone else's lineup, and that's another way of you being able to gain points. So that also means that the 3 people you're facing in your lineup desperately want to still beat you because they can still get points towards their lineup. It's quite a good system, I think, and it works quite well. So this is why I said you don't get very many 15-year-old black belts, because often there'll be a considerable size difference between them and the other brown belts that are trying to get their black belt on the day. So it's normally, they kind of do their best to group you by weight, but when I was doing mine, I was around 73 kilos, maybe a bit less, and I don't think I fought anyone under 80, which is quite a big weight difference, because in a competition I would be fighting everyone within sort of like a 5-6 kilo weight category. So it does make a little bit of a difference, and I know certainly when I was 15 I wouldn't have been ready to do that, because there would have been a considerable strength and size disadvantage really. So the second route is the technical method. This is usually taken by judoka that are just less competitive or don't have an interest in the competitive side of it. Also, it can be taken by sort of judoka that potentially have injuries that are stopping them from being as competitive as they would like, or they just really like the technical aspect of judo. But the reason it's probably less common is typically it takes longer, because not only do you have to learn a lot more theory and a lot more technical understanding of all of the throws, strangles, arm locks, etc. You also have to be a Q grade or a first Q for 5 years, which is obviously a lot longer than 6 months. So typically to complete this, you'd have to run through a full set of kata, which I'll leave a link to in the description of what that would look like. And then they can also test you on any part of the syllabus, so any throw, pin, arm lock, strangle, etc. from any point throughout there, and you'd need to be tested by a senior examiner. And I know judoka that are very good that have got their black belt from either one of those options. It's not necessarily a sign that someone isn't competitive because they've gone down the technical route. You also do have to do a small technical element when you get your first dan competitively, but it's nowhere near as much as if you go down the technical route. So after all that, there are a couple of other ways that the BJA say that you can get your first dan. You can be just awarded it by a higher grade, so if they're higher than a 5th dan, they can, as long as you meet certain criteria like time and grade and things like that, they can just sort of give you one, which again is very rare. You can get it for outstanding performance, which could be like a board of directors that you're competing internationally and nationally and doing very well. There is potential that they could decide that you deserve to be given a certain grade. And then the last one, which is extremely rare, is you can get an honorary black belt. This is normally for like non-judoka that are given it almost as an award. I hope that's been helpful, and any questions related to the dan grade system in the UK or any of the grading system in the UK, then please feel free to chuck it in the comments, and good luck going for your dan grade.